Okay, we're jumping straight into a really fascinating topic today. It's one that kind of asks us to rethink everything, the very nature of reality.
It definitely does.
And this whole exploration, this entire deep dive, it's based completely on one source. That's the book, The Informational Cosmos, Kabbalah and Quantum Theory in Dialogue Beyond Matter, Information as the Fabric of Reality and Science in Kabbalah by Keydar Shemer.
That's right. So everything we're going to talk about today, all the concepts, these, surprising parallels, the connections, it all comes straight from the insights in this book.
Yeah.
Our mission really is to unpack its core idea, which is, pretty revolutionary. That information, maybe not matter or energy, might be the most fundamental thing, the building block of reality.
And what's so compelling, I think, is how the book finds this resonance, the surprising overlap between cutting-edge physics like quantum mechanics, information theory, and really ancient mystical wisdom, specifically Kabbalah.
Exactly. Two vastly different paths. But the book argues they both seem to point towards a universe that's fundamentally based on information and meaning.
Yeah. Get ready for some, definitely some aha moments, I think.
For sure.
So, okay, let's start right at the beginning. Humans, we've always wondered, right? What is reality actually made of?
Yeah, the fundamental question.
For ages, it was elements, earth, air, fire, water. Then we got down to atoms and subatomic particles. And now these, fundamental fields filling all of space.
And now this book throws a curveball, drawing from physics and Kabbalah, saying maybe the answer is information.
Information.
Yeah. And the word itself kind of gives a clue, doesn't it? Comes from the Latin informare.
Oh, right.
Meaning to give form to shape something, structure it. So there's this built-in link between information and the actual patterns of reality.
That origin is really telling, actually. And it's not a totally new idea, is it? You mentioned philosophical echoes.
Well, yeah, you can look back in the Stoics, for instance. Their concept of logos.
Logos, right.
It was this idea of a rational, creative principle that organized the whole cosmos. It's like an ancient gut feeling about some underlying organizing intelligence, maybe.
An intuition.
Exactly. But it really became, scientifically rigorous in the 20th century. People like Claude Shannon.
Shannon, 1948, information theory.
Healy, the mathematical foundation.
And here's where it gets, for me anyway, really weirdly interesting. Shannon's math for measuring information, it looked exactly like Boltzmann's formula for entropy.
Yes. The measure of disorder in a system. S is K log W.
The one on his tombstone.
That's the one. Connecting the tiny world of particle arrangements, the W, to this big picture property, entropy.
S. And isn't there that great story about John von Neumann telling Shannon he should call his measure entropy?
Oh yeah, the famous advice.
Because von Neumann supposedly said, no one knows what entropy really is, so in a debate you will always have the advantage.
It does highlight that deep, almost mysterious connection, doesn't it? Between information and disorder. And this growing realization led really influential physicists like John Wheeler to say physics has gone through 3 ages.
Okay, what were they?
First, particles, then fields. And now, he argued, we're in the age of information.
And that's where his famous phrase comes in, it from bit.
Exactly.
The idea that physical reality, the it, fundamentally comes from these basic binary choices, yes-no questions, the bit.
Right. Suggesting the universe isn't just static stuff, but maybe emerges from interaction, from answers to questions, hints at a participatory universe.
A bit being the smallest possible unit of info, that binary choice.
Yep. And we've learned since then that information isn't just, an abstract concept, it's physical. Landauer's principle, for instance.
What does that say?
It shows that erasing information, even just one bit, requires a minimum amount of energy. There's a physical cost to forgetting.
Wow. Okay. So information has physical weight, in a sense.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
And nature even seems to put limits on it, like the Bekenstein bound.
Like black holes, right.
Yeah, thinking about black hole thermodynamics. And the holographic principle, too. These ideas suggest information in a volume might be encoded on its surface, like a hologram. It points to information being this fundamental but also limited resource.
And the book, this is the amazing part, connects this super modern physics thinking back to Kabbalah.
It really does.
Yeah.
Think about the concept of the Word of God, not just as commands like, let there be light, but as the actual building blocks of creation.
Like in the Sefer HaYetzirah, that ancient text.
Exactly. It describes the universe being formed from combinations of the 22 Hebrew letters and the 10 Sephirot, these divine emanations or principles.
Creating 32 paths.
Right. It's framed as this cosmic information process, discrete elements combining, like code, to create reality.
It's information-based creation millennia ago.
Pretty much. And then there's the concept of Simsum.
The divine construct.
Yeah, the idea that the infinite sort of withdrew or constricted itself to make space for finite creation.
Yeah.
The book suggests understanding this is the initial act of making space for distinct information to even exist, for reality to become discrete, measurable, separate from that initial undifferentiated unity.
Okay, that idea, reality becoming distinct from unity, that leads us right into the next big theme, doesn't it?
It does. This realization, found both in quantum physics and Kabbalah, that reality underneath it all is deeply interconnected. It emerges from some kind of fundamental unity.
And the quantum examples are just mind-blowing, like the EPR paradox.
Einstein's spooky action at a distance.
Right, entangled particles. You measure one and instantly the other one is affected no matter how far apart they are, miles, light years, instantly.
Yeah, Einstein hated it. Seemed to break the speed of light limit. But then John Bell came along.
Bell's theorem.
He proved, theoretically, and experiments later confirmed, these non-local correlations are real. It wasn't just that the particles had some secret prearranged instructions.
So it ruled out those local hidden variables.
Exactly. It showed reality isn't local in the way our common sense tells us it should be.
Which led David Bohm to his idea
of the implicate order. This deeper underlying reality where everything is folded together, interconnected. What we see, the explicate order, is just, well, an unfolding or projection from that deeper level.
His aquarium analogy is perfect for that.
It really is.
Two cameras looking at the same fish from different angles. On the screens, the fish looks separate, maybe unrelated.
But they're just two views, two projections of the one fish in the one tank. Their separation is an illusion of perspective.
And this resonates powerfully, the book says, with Kabbalah's core idea of Ein Sof.
God's infinite essence, a reality that's totally boundless, no distinctions, just pure, undifferentiated unity. The book draws a parallel there to like quantum maximal coherence, all possibilities unified before observation.
So how do we get from that pure unity to, well, this finite reality?
Kabbalah, especially Lurianic Kabbalah, talks about Simsum again, that divine contraction, creating a vacated space. But it's not empty. Within it is the Reshimo, like a subtle divine imprint, a trace or a blueprint that guides how creation unfolds within that space.
Okay. And creation itself in Kabbalah is often described using language, right? Speech.
Very much so. Divine speech. The Hebrew letters aren't just symbols on a page. They're seen as the fundamental channels, the building blocks. Like in Genesis, let the earth sprout vegetation. God speaks, and it happens.
And the Baal HaTanya, didn't he take that even further?
He did. He taught that this divine speech isn't just a one-time thing at the beginning. It's continuous. It's constantly sustaining reality moment by moment. Without that ongoing divine utterance, that infusion of vitality, everything would just dissolve back into nothingness.
Wow. So existence is an ongoing act of speech.
In that view, yes. And Sefer Yetzirah provides you could say, the code, again, those 32 paths, the letters in Sephirah. They form the underlying informational structure, the matrix of the universe.
The parallel seems pretty clear then. Kabbalah. Divine letters and speech shaping potential into actual form. Quantum physics. Information dictating how classical reality emerges from the quantum field of possibilities.
Exactly. It's potential getting structured into the tangible world we experience.
And this is where we come in. Human consciousness.
Yeah, as a kind of co-creator. Think about Adam naming the animals in Genesis.
Just giving them labels.
Well, the Kabbalistic interpretation is deeper. He wasn't just labeling. He was perceiving and articulating their essential nature, their divine essence, their underlying informational pattern, you could say.
And that lines up with the observer in quantum mechanics, the act of observation collapsing possibilities.
It does seem to align. The book suggests consciousness plays this crucial role, bridging the infinite realm of pure potential and the finite collapsed world we actually perceive. Observation actualizes potential.
So the big picture here is that reality isn't static. It wasn't just made once. It's dynamic. It's an ongoing process.
Absolutely. There's that Kabbalistic prayer, right? Hamekadesh betuvabil yom tamid masa bereshit.
Renewing the work of creation constantly, every single day.
Exactly. It captures that perfectly.
And that mirrors the quantum picture too, doesn't it? This constant dynamic dance between coherence, all the possibilities held together, and decoherence, the collapse into definite states.
Yeah, moment by moment, reality is shaped by this interplay. Both views, ancient and modern, emphasize creation as this continuous, active process, not just a historical event.
Okay, this idea of continuous creation and consciousness being involved, it naturally makes you think about our own minds. How do we perceive reality? How does our perception shape our experience?
And there's this incredible story, a real-life example the book uses, neuroscientist Jill Bolt Taylor.
Oh, I know her story. The stroke.
Yeah, a massive stroke in her left hemisphere. The part of the brain that handles language, analysis, separation, categorizing the world into distinct objects.
And when that shut down?
She lost her sense of being separate. She described experiencing reality as just pure unity, blissful connection.
Flowing like a great whale through a sea of silent euphoria. That's her phrase, isn't it?
That's the one. Losing the brain's categorizing function led her to feel completely interconnected. It's an amazing subjective glimpse.
And philosophy has grappled with this too, right?
Kant.
Immanuel Kant, yeah. He argued that the world we experience, what he called the phenomenal world, isn't the thing in itself, the noumenal world directly.
Okay.
Instead, he said our perception is shaped, structured, by innate categories of our own minds, like built-in software.
Filters, almost, like space-time causality. Kant said those aren't necessarily properties of the world out there, but structures in here, in our minds, that organize our experience.
Exactly. He saw them as inherent mental structures. And this actually helped ground Newtonian physics, providing a philosophical basis for causality, which someone like Hume had questioned. So, Taylor's stroke experience, it was like she temporarily bypassed those Kantian categories, got a glimpse of reality before the mind structured it.
That's one way to interpret it, yeah. A taste of the noumenal, maybe unfiltered by the usual mental processing. And modern neuroscience kind of backs Kant up, finding specific brain regions involved in processing exactly these things: space, time, causality.
Then you jump to the quantum world, and observation becomes this huge central puzzle again.
Right. Particles existing in superposition, multiple states at once until you measure them. Then, poof, they collapse into just one state.
Schrödinger's cat illustrates how weird that is.
The classic thought experiment. Is the cat alive and dead until we look? It really forces you to ask what observation even means, especially when you scale quantum ideas up to our everyday world.
And the double slit experiment is the definitive demo, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Electrons fired at two slits. Don't watch which slit they go through. They act like waves, create an interference pattern.
But if you do watch, put a detector there.
They act like particles. Go through one slit or the other. No interference pattern. The mere act of getting information about their path changes their behavior.
It changes the outcome. The observer isn't passive.
Not at all. They're an active participant. This is the measurement problem, a core quantum mystery. The book mentions different interpretations. Copenhagen, many worlds.
But it focuses on decoherence as having a philosophical parallel.
Yeah, decoherence is the process where a quantum system interacts with its environment, loses its superposition, and starts behaving classically. The environment effectively observes it.
And the parallel is to?
To Kant. Decoherence is like the environment transforming the quantum potential, superposition, maybe like the noumenal, into a definite classical state, like the phenomenal world. It mirrors the mind's categories structuring raw reality into our experience.
Wow, okay. And this maps onto Kabbalah, too.
Beautifully, the book argues. Ein Sof, before creation, that's like the undifferentiated unity, pure potential, similar to quantum superposition or Kant's noumenal realm.
Then Tzimtzum, the constriction, makes space for things to be distinct.
Right. And the Sephirot act as the divine attributes mediating that transition, like filters or principles. Chokmah, wisdom, is like pure potentiality, maybe analogous to entanglement.
Okay.
Bina, understanding, gives form and structure to that potential, bringing definiteness.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like decoherence. And Da'at, knowledge, is the synthesis, conscious awareness emerging from this interplay.
And the Hebrew letters.
Seen as channels for divine energy, shaping potential into specific forms. That resonates with quantum field theory, where particles are just excitation-structured forms arising from underlying fields.
So the quantum collapse via observation parallels the Kabbalistic idea of Tzimtzum and creation through the Sephirot and letters. Both describe a process of turning potential into structured reality.
That's the parallel the book draws, yes.
Right.
Transforming undifferentiated potential through mediating principles or acts of awareness.
It even brings in Pauli and Jung.
Wolfgang Pauli, the physicist, and Carl Jung, the psychiatrist, their work on synchronicity.
Meaningful coincidences, right? Things that seem connected by meaning, but not by cause and effect.
Exactly. They propose two underlying fields. An ontological field of undifferentiated potential, maybe like Keydar or Chokmah in Kabbalah, or quantum entanglement and an epistemological field of conscious awareness, linked more to Bina or Da'at.
And synchronicity suggests
That mind and matter might emerge from a deeper unified level where meaning and being aren't separate. Observer and observed are woven into the same fabric.
And Jill Bolt Taylor's experience becomes like a living bridge again.
Yeah, a subjective confirmation that this state of unity, of being an energy being connected to everything, as she put it, is accessible, even if our usual mind-structured reality hides it.
So the big takeaway here is reality isn't just out there. It seems to emerge from this dynamic interaction between potential and consciousness. Observation, awareness itself seems central in determining what actually is. We're participants.
Active participants, not just spectators.
Which leads us right to maybe the biggest question of all. Why? Why is there something rather than nothing?
A profound question. Kabbalah tackles this with the concept of ayin.
Often translated as nothingness.
Right. But crucially, the book emphasizes it's not a literal void, not just absence. It's described more like a state of infinite potential that exists before any manifestation, a source of possibility that's beyond our concept of something.
And physics has a parallel here too, the quantum vacuum.
Surprisingly, yes. We used to think empty space was just empty. But quantum field theory changed that. The vacuum isn't empty. It's seething with zero-point energy, virtual particles popping in and out of existence constantly.
We see effects of this, right? Like the Casimir effect.
Exactly. The quantum vacuum is like this hidden reservoir of potential energy and activity. So the book draws an analogy, not an equation, but an analogy between ayin and the quantum vacuum. Both conceptualize a state of potential from which somethingness emerges.
And tying back to consciousness, this reinforces the idea that consciousness might not just observe, but actively participate in shaping reality from that potential.
If reality emerges from potential via information, then ideas like the soul being a divine spark, Kabbalah, or perhaps an indestructible informational pattern, suggested by quantum info theory, gain a new depth. The soul could be this enduring pattern rooted in that primordial potential.
Kabbalah also describes reality having different layers, doesn't it? These image spaces or worlds.
Yes, the four worlds. Our physical world, Ayelet, is seen as the lowest, densest level. It's a projection or crystallization of higher, more subtle metaphysical realms. Yetzirah, Bariah, Absolute.
Like filters.
Kind of. Each realm filters or structures the divine light, making it less unified, more defined, until it manifests as our familiar physical reality, like light passing through increasingly tinted or patterned glass.
And there's a modern physics parallel here too, the holographic principle.
Leonard Susskind's idea, yeah. Suggesting all the information in a 3D volume might actually be encoded on its 2D boundary. It implies our 3D world could be a projection.
Another fascinating parallel suggesting reality is fundamentally informational structure, not just stuff.
And back to human participation. Adam naming the animals, understood as capturing their essence, it parallels quantum measurement collapsing potential into definite reality. Our engagement defines or actualizes.
Even linguistics gets involved. It's pure Worf.
The idea that language shapes perception. It aligns with the Kabbalistic notion of divine speech being the underlying informational matrix that sustains reality.
What about the ethical side of this? Kabbalah talks about divine unity.
Profoundly. The phrase Ein od milvado, there's nothing besides him. Texts like the Tanya interpret this as radical monism. Everything, us, others, the environment, is ultimately part of one single divine reality.
Which means
harming others or damaging the environment. It's not just an external act against something separate. It's an affront to the shared divine reality we're all part of. It violates that inherent unity.
And that resonates with modern psychology.
Yeah, findings in social neuroscience, environmental psychology show that fostering a sense of interconnectedness actually boosts empathy, cooperation, altruism.
The book also mentions more speculative models like Hameroff and Penrose.
Yeah. Trying to link consciousness directly to quantum effects happening inside neurons. It's controversial, but it hints at this deep intertwining of physics and mind.
And all this connects to Tikkun Olam.
Repairing the world. The idea that our actions right here in the physical world can elevate reality, mend the brokenness, contribute to universal harmony. We're called to be partners in this cosmic repair and upliftment.
So seeing the world as rooted in ayin, that hidden potential, means recognizing the divine spark in everything. It links the sacred and the mundane. Our world isn't just random stuff. It's filled with potential, and we have a role in its unfolding.
A crucial role.
That idea of unfolding, of an ongoing process, it makes me reconsider time itself. The usual picture is time's arrow pointing towards decay, right? Based on entropy always increasing.
Yeah, the second law of thermodynamics. Eddington's view of time's arrow, or even Einstein's block universe where past, present, future all just exist, often interpreted as leading towards increasing disorder, maybe heat death.
But the book offers a different view.
It does. It reframes time not just as decay, but as a journey from initial quantum unity, through separation and complexity, but ultimately moving towards a renewed, more conscious wholeness.
Okay, how does that work? Where does that view come from?
Well, think back to quantum entanglement. Von Neumann actually showed that while the individual parts of an entangled system might look random or disordered, have high entropy, the total system, the whole thing considered together, can have zero entropy. Perfect order.
Like the orchestra analogy you used.
Exactly. An individual violin might sound chaotic practicing alone, but together the orchestra creates complex, ordered harmony. The whole has properties the parts don't.
And experiments keep confirming these connections.
Yeah, like those at Delft University showing non-local correlations persist. Seemingly separate parts are acting as aspects of a single coordinated whole.
Information is the key there.
Information seems to be the thread weaving the parts together. Entanglement is the quantum version, but interactions in complex systems show this linking up too.
And Bohm's implicate order fits here too.
Perfectly. Our experience of time flowing, the separation of moments, can be part of the explicate order, an unfolding from a deeper, possibly timeless, implicate order where everything is interconnected.
Then you bring in complex systems science.
Right. These aren't just complicated systems like a phone with many parts. They're systems like ecosystems, brains, economies, where simple local interactions lead to unpredictable, emergent global behaviors.
Self-organization.
That's a key property. Think birds flocking, snowflakes forming, ants building complex nests, order arising spontaneously from the bottom up.
And emergence, like consciousness from neurons.
Exactly. Properties rising at a higher level that you just can't predict by looking at the individual components. Carl Friston talks about the brain operating at the edge of chaos, this dynamic sweet spot for complexity.
So how does this relate to the Kabbalistic view of creation's journey?
Well, figures like the Arizal describe the cosmic story before creation. Ein Sof, infinite light, perfect unity, like a zero-entropy quantum state.
Then Simsum, the constriction, that's the separation.
Corresponding to separation, distinction. Analogous, perhaps, to quantum decoherence, where the unified state collapses into definite states.
But why the separation? Why not stay in perfect unity?
Kabbalists like Ramchal suggested it's to allow for conscious beings, to give us the freedom, the choice, to reconnect with that unity consciously. Cordovero added that separation actually reveals new facets of unity that weren't apparent in the original undifferentiated state. Complexity allows for richer unity.
So the book proposes a kind of arc for time's arrow. 4 stages.
Yeah, sort of a cosmic progression. Stage 1, initial quantum coherence, unconscious unity like Ein Sof.
Yeah.
Stage 2, separation and complexity. Symptom, decoherence. Distinct systems emerge. The universe expands, cools, forms structures.
Stage 3.
Growing integration. These complex systems start interacting, forming networks, richer interconnections. Life emerges, ecosystems develop.
When stage 4.
Conscious unity. A state that blends the original unity with all the complexity that's evolved. Reaching a state of awareness where beings are unified not by necessity, but by conscious choice and understanding. This points towards a messianic era, or the completion of Tikkun Olam.
So the spiritual takeaway is, the universe isn't just winding down randomly, it's on a path towards greater complexity, integration, and ultimately conscious wholeness.
That's the perspective offered, yes. Consciousness and complexity aren't accidents, they're driving the process. And we're part of that journey, actively participating in Tikkun Olam. Time's arrow points not just to decay, but towards potential realized, towards conscious unity.
If time has this purposeful direction, it implies the universe isn't just aimless drift. But how does purpose emerge if basic physics laws seem deterministic or random?
Well, the argument presented is that purpose isn't necessarily imposed from outside, but it emerges naturally from the self-organizing tendencies of complex systems.
Like we discussed a cell, an ant colony. They exhibit purposeful behavior that arises from the interactions of their parts, not just the parts themselves.
Exactly. It's the organization, the interaction, that gives rise to function and apparent purpose. An ecosystem isn't designed top-down in the way we design a machine, but it functions purposefully through the interplay of its components.
And science shows this emergent order everywhere.
Yeah, Bernard cells and heated fluids forming those perfect hexagons. the oscillating patterns in the Belousov-Zhabotinsky chemical reaction. Intricate order arising spontaneously from simple local rules, no master controller needed.
Hermann Haken's synergetics framework.
Right, trying to find unifying principles. Systems pushed out of equilibrium tend to self-organize, settling into stable patterns, attractors driven by both deterministic forces and random fluctuations. Self-organization seems to be a fundamental principle of nature.
And this resonates with Kabbalah's view of
divine providence. The idea that the universe isn't just chaos, it's guided by an inherent plan, a purpose woven into its fabric.
the Sephiro again, maybe? Not just static channels, but dynamically interacting principles whose interplay creates the patterns of reality, like those fluid molecules interacting to create hexagons.
That's a potential analogy, yes. And Kabbalah even addresses suffering and evil within this purposeful framework. It's not seen as a flaw, but as part of the process of tikkun olam. Divine self-limitation allows free will, which means the possibility of going astray, but also the potential for transformation. Hardship becomes an opportunity for growth, part of the purposeful journey.
So the bridge here is that purpose emerges from the system's inherent structure and dynamics. The universe naturally tends towards higher order, integration, complexity.
Exactly. And human consciousness is perhaps the pinnacle of this emergent order that we know of. It arises from neural complexity, but it also experiences and enacts purpose. Our sense of meaning, our free will, adds a crucial layer to this.
Even quantum biology hints at this.
Potentially. Finding quantum coherence in photosynthesis or bird navigation. It suggests that self-organization and perhaps information processing go down to the molecular level in living things, maybe linking physics, life, and purpose in ways we don't fully understand yet.
So the universe isn't just passively containing purpose. It seems to have an inherent drive towards order, purpose, self-awareness, and our role is to actively participate, to align our actions with these natural patterns towards greater harmony and integration.
We discover purpose, but we also help create it through conscious action.
This idea of aligning ourselves, participating, it brings up the question of influence. How does divine influence, or Shefa, flow in this informational universe? The book uses resonance, right?
Yes, so resonance, both the physics concept and as a powerful metaphor for how influence might work between different levels of reality, say, the divine and the human.
So in physics, resonances.
It's when you drive a system at its natural frequency, like pushing a swing at just the right moment, small pushes make it go much higher, or, the less accurate but common examples, an opera singer shattering a glass by matching its resonant frequency, or the complex factors leading to the Tacoma Narrows Bridge collapse.
And it happens at the quantum level too, spectroscopy.
Sure, atoms absorbing or emitting light only at specific resonant frequencies. But the book is careful. This is a metaphor for spiritual connection, not a literal description of divine radio waves.
Okay, metaphor noted.
The principle is alignment. A system responds strongly when its internal state matches an external driving influence.
And the electromagnetic spectrum analogy helps here.
Yeah, think of the EM spectrum radio, infrared, visible light, X-rays, gamma rays, all the same fundamental field, but different frequencies with vastly different effects.
So divine emanation is like an infinite spectrum of spiritual frequencies.
That's the analogy. And our ability to receive or interact with that spectrum depends on our own internal state, our own tuning.
This connects to Maimonides, doesn't it? His view on providence.
In his Guide for the Perplexed, yes. He distinguished between general providence, the universal laws of nature governing everything, and individual providence.
Which depends on the person.
Exactly. He argued individual providence, specific guidance, or divine influence depends on a person's intellectual and moral development.
He used the term Shefa.
Divine influx, or emanation. Maimonides saw receiving Shefa like tuning a radio. You have to cultivate your intellect, your character, essentially tune your inner state to become receptive to that higher influence.
So guidance isn't just random. It comes when our inner frequency matches the frequency of that higher reality. He actually said something like that, didn't he?
He did. Quoting the book's reference, he wrote that someone who attaches himself to God and is endowed with more intellect is subject to greater providence, according to what he deserves. Your capacity determines your reception.
And Kabbalah later evolved this idea. From Shefa to Or.
From influx to light, or Ein Sof, the infinite light, it's seen as a deepening insight. Divine emanation is this infinite spectrum, and the Sephiro act like specific frequencies or prisms, structuring the light, making it accessible.
So we could talk about a metaphorical self-frequency.
Yeah, the unique vibrational state of our consciousness, shaped by our development. like tuning an instrument, refining our inner qualities, changes our resonance.
And back to complex systems. The fixed laws are like general providence, but the fluctuations, the choices, allow for individual providence.
That's a way to see it. Refining our intellectual and moral capacities raises our metaphorical self-frequency. This enhances our resonance with higher divine frequencies, leading to greater individual providence. It explains why the same event can impact people so differently. It depends on their internal tuning.
That makes a lot of sense. It's the receiver, not just the signal.
Precisely. And Maimonides even applied this resonance idea to prophecy. He said it required not just intellectual and moral perfection, but also a highly developed imaginative faculty. He saw imagination not as fantasy, but as a crucial translator, a transducer.
The transducer.
Converting the abstract divine influx, the Shefa, into concrete symbols, visions, words that the prophet could understand and convey. He wrote about the emanation flowing first to the rational faculty, then to the imaginative faculty.
So prophecy wasn't supernatural magic, but a natural result of highly tuned consciousness resonating.
That was Maimonides' rationalist view, yes.
Yeah.
A peak state of resonance and translation.
So the implications are huge. Spiritual growth is literally internal tuning. Providence is both universal flow and individual reception. Prayer, meditation, good deeds, they're ways to tune our receiver.
And maybe miracles are moments of perfect resonance, where the internal state aligns perfectly to receive and manifest something extraordinary from that higher potential.
Okay, if we have this self-frequency, this inner being that we tune, what is that self? What is the soul? Does it endure?
The flame of the candle question again. The book really dives into this, proposing the soul might be understood, metaphorically, as an eternal informational system.
An information pattern.
A pattern of meaning, consciousness, identity that could persist even when the physical body, the hardware, breaks down.
Shifting from thinking of self as just matter or energy
to seeing it as an enduring pattern. Like a river, the water changes constantly, but we still call it the same river because the pattern, the form persists, or software running on different machines.
And quantum information offers metaphors here.
Intriguing ones. Superposition suggests holding multiple potentials. Entanglement implies deep connections that might persist beyond physical proximity. Maybe information about relationships, about our unique pattern of connections, is conserved somehow.
The Jewish tradition describes the soul in levels, right?
Yes, often 5 levels, seen as an integrated system. Layers of informational complexity. Nefesh, vital biological patterns. Ruach, emotional, relational, ethical patterns. Neshama, spiritual awareness, purpose, core values. Chaya, connection to universal life force. And Yekida, the point of unity with the divine source.
Like nested layers of informational abstraction.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And you find complementary ideas elsewhere, the Buddhist mind stream, the Hindu Atman.
But how could an informational pattern persist after death without the brain?
Well, think about information's ability to persist against entropy if encoded properly. Music exists as notation, as digital code. As sound waves, the pattern endures across different physical forms.
So the idea is the soul pattern might persist in some other medium or dimension.
Kabbalah suggests the lower levels, like Nefesh, associated with the body, dissolve, but the higher, more refined informational levels continue. The book draws a metaphorical link to entanglement. Perhaps the essential connections, the relational information, persist even to physical separation.
Of course, this brings up tough questions, skepticism.
Absolutely, and the book acknowledges them. The hard problem of consciousness. Why is there subjective experience at all? An informational view offers a framework, but doesn't fully solve the feeling of being.
And the brain dependence issue. Brain damage clearly affects consciousness.
Right. The counter-argument explored is the brain as receiver-translator, not generator. Like a TV set damaged the TV, you lose the picture, but the broadcast signal might still be there.
Plus, skepticism about quantum effects in warm, wet brains.
Quantum biology is still a young field. Decoherence is a major challenge. The book presents these as open, important questions, not trying to offer definitive proof.
But thinking about the soul as information, what are the practical implications? How does it change how we live?
It can shift perspective significantly. Seeing life as continuity and death as transformation, not annihilation, could foster acceptance, reduce fear.
Makes sense.
It strongly emphasizes interconnectedness. If we're informational patterns in a larger network, compassion and responsibility become paramount. Our actions ripple through the system. Hannah, the hospice nurse's story. Feeling that connection beyond words.
Yeah, that was powerful.
And it highlights meaning-making. If we are fundamentally informational beings in what seems to be a meaningful information-based universe, then creating and engaging with meaning reflects our core nature. It encourages prioritizing inner growth, wisdom, compassion, love as patterns likely to endure, recognizing connections, treating nature as a complex information system itself, creating with intention.
Okay, so if the soul is this enduring informational pattern, what generates it? Where does the pattern come from? What keeps it from just being random noise?
That leads us to the very source, according to Kabbalah. It brings us to Keydar, the crown.
Keydar, the highest Sephira.
Yes. In the view presented, Keydar is the crucial bridge, the ultimate origin point from which all these informational patterns emerge.
Like the source code.
That's a great metaphor used in the book. The original source code for the entire cosmic program. It's the point where infinite, undifferentiated potential starts to gain the structure needed to become discernible patterns.
And you need both randomness and structure for information, right?
Exactly. Keydar embodies that balance. Infinite potential, Ayin, meets divine direction, will, and delight.
It sits at the very top of the tree of life.
The apex. Bridging Ein Sof, the infinite, and the structured cosmos, Rabbi Chaim Vital called it the root of all the Sephirah.
Its nature is paradoxical.
Very much so. It's both utterly transcendent, beyond our grasp, and yet immanent, the innermost essence of everything, the boundary between limitless and finite. The Zohar calls it the most hidden.
And there are levels within Keydar itself.
The book outlines 3. Keydar Ilyan, the supreme crown. Pure potential, indistinguishable from Ein Sof. Maybe a parallel to the quantum vacuum. Then Yeti Gomen, the ancient of days. This embodies primordial divine delight, Wanig, a state of blissful flowing potential, perhaps analogous to Boehm's joyful implicate order.
And the third.
Archampen, the long face. This represents divine will, Ratzon. The active principle that channels the delight, directs the potential into purposeful creation. It's the organizing intention, the source of the fundamental laws or patterns.
So creation isn't from necessity, but from will acting on delight.
A universe born of divine joy and purpose. It's a beautiful concept, and you find echoes elsewhere. Vedanta's Leela, divine play, the Sufi breath of the compassionate.
And this connects to our own souls.
The Tanya teaches we have sparks of this divine will and delight within us. Our deepest spiritual longings, our drive to create, connect, find meaning. These reflect that source. Our informational patterns aren't just cold code. They're infused with this creative energy.
Keydar seems full of paradoxes,
which challenge our usual binary logic. It's described as both existence and non-existence, the nothing that is everything. A bit like quantum indeterminacy, potential, and actuality blurring.
And it's the source of knowledge, yet unknowable.
Yes. Like Gödel's incompleteness theorem, suggests limits to what can be known from within a system. These paradoxes hint that the ultimate source transcends our conceptual frameworks. Consciousness and information processing emerge from principles deeper than our minds can fully map.
How does Keydar relate to Wheeler's participatory universe?
If consciousness is rooted in Keydar's will and delight, then the observer's role becomes fundamental. The book draws parallels. The observer effect in QM could mirror divine will actualizing potential. The universe creating information could echo divine speech. The self-organizing nature of the cosmos could reflect the kind of divine recursion originating from Keydar. Again, conceptual parallels, not equations.
Are there ways to connect with this source, practically?
Kabbalah offers practices. Meditation on nothingness, Betul, aiming for temporary self-transcendence, letting go of the ego to touch that pure potential. Make yourself into nothing, as Rabbi Duff Bear taught.
And contemplating paradox.
Yes. Methods like those used by Rabbi Abraham Abulafia, using paradox to shift consciousness beyond linear thought, opening experiential gateways to that source of creativity and joy.
So Keydar is this gateway to transcendence, the source of joyful purpose underlying everything.
Carrying that awareness helps reframe our whole understanding of the universe, right down to the nature of matter itself.
Which brings us right back to the start, almost. Max Tegmark's quote, "The world is not made of matter. The world is made of mathematics." Or information.
Yeah, hold a stone. Feels solid, right? Real. But what if that solidity, its existence, is fundamentally about incredibly complex, organized information?
We've journeyed through seeing information as potentially fundamental, bridging physics and spirit.
Einstein showed matter and energy are two sides of the same coin, e price homophone. But the deeper question the book asks is, what organizes that energy into the specific forms we call matter?
Information is the blueprint.
That's the argument. Wheeler's it from bit, again, physical things, the its, emerging from the informational bits, the answers to the universe's yes-no questions about itself.
And the interplay of energy, entropy, and information is crucial here.
Right. Entropy disorder tends to increase. Shannon linked entropy to potential information, the number of possibilities.
So information is order, entropy is potential information or disorder. Seems paradoxical.
The resolution offered is that energy is used by processes in the universe to constrain all that potential information, all those possibilities, into specific, meaningful, ordered patterns, actualized information. That's what structure, what matter is.
Like the Kabbalistic idea of divine light potential,
Right.
energy being channeled and crystallized through the Sephiro into ordered reality.
Exactly. Potential becomes actualized and constrained. And living systems constantly use energy to maintain their order against entropy, maybe mirroring a continuous divine vitality, Shefa, sustaining creation.
Quantum information concepts seem relevant here too. Qubits.
Qubits hold information in superposition, exponentially more capacity than classical bits, hinting at the vast potential encoded within matter. An entanglement, non-local connection, reflects the Kabbalistic idea of akdut, underlying unity, even between seemingly separate material objects.
And quantum field theory. The universal grid.
QFT paints space as filled with continuous fields. Particles are just localized excitations, ripples in these fields. Physicist Frank Wilczek calls this underlying reality the grid, encoding all possibilities.
Which sounds like the Reshimu again.
That subtle imprint left after Tzimtzum, the template or matrix upon which creation unfolds, like a grid of potential.
The voice microphone analogy works here too.
Yeah, the information, the message, persists across different media, air vibrations, electrical signals, digital code. Maybe quantum fields are the ultimate medium for informational patterns manifesting as matter.
And finally, the holographic universe idea.
Stemming from black hole physics, Bekenstein's discovery that information scales with surface area, not volume. The holographic principle extrapolates this. Maybe our 3D universe is a projection from information encoded on a distant 2D boundary.
Like a hologram.
Which resonates deeply with the Kabbalistic picture of creation unfolding through contractions, crystallizations, projections of divine light from a more fundamental source.
And that incredible mind-bending journey is where this deep dive, based entirely on Keydar Shemer's The Informational Cosmos, leaves us.
It's quite a trip, isn't it? From information as fundamental, through quantum mechanics and Kabbalah, the role of mind, the nature of soul, the source in Keydar, and finally seeing matter itself as potentially crystallized information.
The convergence between ancient wisdom and modern science explored in this book is just, well, stunning.
It really challenges our basic assumptions about reality and